And Robert was really happy. I remember when he like in November, he tells me like, hey, guess what? The miners got into, well, first he called me kind of like a like nonchalant kind of like conversation about like whatever and here and there. I don't even know. But then he's like, and then he's like, okay, well, oh yeah, by the way, uh, the miners got into Sundance. It's like, what the freak? It's like, are you kidding me?
You
Like,
gonna lead off with
I know,
that?
right? I was like, what were you doing? And so yeah,
Oh
it
man.
was, and then he was, I could tell in his voice that he was very happy and proud too. And so
Yeah.
I was super ecstatic. And
Sorø Films is a production company that supports emerging storytellers with all aspects of independent filmmaking. On this podcast, we interview filmmakers about their practical wisdom and experience in an effort to demystify the industry. Today we're joined by director of photography Oscar Ignacio Jiménez, whose work, including The Killing of Two Lovers and The Miners, has screened at a number of international film festivals, including Sundance. I guess the way that I had this thought out of how we could start this is like, when did you know you wanted to do cinematography? But maybe it's a little bit before that, in kind of what led you to wanting to do cinematography. It's a little bit different of a question, I guess.
No, it's funny because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, especially the Roger Deakins, and we start out with that question, and then kind of hearing like their it's cool to hear out how like a lot of people didn't even realize that filmmaking in general was a job that you can do. It felt like a very privileged job that it's almost like inherited. And so that's how I felt too. I mean, I watched films for um as uh as entertainment and you know, just family bonding time. But growing up, like I just um I loved cooking. Like that was one of my things that I really loved to do. And mostly I think it's because I would see my mom cook, and then when people would come over, they would always just rave about like her food. And my dad also loved to cook as well. And they would come over and they'd be like, "Oh, that was so good." And for me, I was just like, "Really?" And I think that triggered in my head is like, what makes food taste good, or what goes into it, what goes into the preparation? Because when I see my mom cook, she just throws things together. It just become it was almost like second nature. She would come from work, and within a half an hour, she already prepped and it's already cooking. And I'm just like, man, it doesn't look like there's any type of technique or thought into it. It's just in there. And so yeah, no, and I think my parents were also pretty creative, but I never saw them as artists. My dad, my parents are first generation immigrants, but my dad loved music. We always had music playing, and it wasn't just like Latin music. It was music from all over the world. He loved European electronic music. It was is
Yes.
interesting. Yeah, he loved European
Like
electronic. Yeah.
EDM,
I don't even,
trap, or like
I don't know how to classify it. Like
electronica.
probably electronica,
Amazing.
stuff that like I would like. Yeah, I don't even know how to classify it, but he would get a lot of like these mixtapes, because he was a DJ, and he was a part-time DJ that would play for quinceañeras, weddings, and other just events like in our Latin community. And my mom was an avid like she loved to take photos of her kids.
Hmm.
So she always had a disposable camera, or just a 35 millimeter like cheap camera, point and shoot. And she would like every single weekend we would go to Walmart and she'll develop her pictures, and within like 2 hours we'll get them back. And that's one of my hobbies too, is just going through photographs,
Hmm.
just because it was cool. It's just cool memories. And so
You had a lot lying around at your
we
house.
did. We still have boxes and boxes of it. And I remember like I would have like these worst case scenarios in my head. It's like, okay, if this house burned right now, what would be the first thing that I'd take? And then I would always my head is like, okay, where are the photographs? I want it to be easy access because I just want to take them all, because those are
Yeah.
the memories.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't care about anything else. I don't care. Uh, so yeah, the photographs were like my even today, like that. I think more so now that as a cinematographer, I really appreciate like the memories that my mom kept. And
Hmm.
so it was cool. So like and so I guess I'm saying all this is because I feel like even though I never had like a conscious decision to become a filmmaker, I feel like my parents did a really good job to just kind of give me like the building blocks of a creative mind.
Hmm.
They were creative in their own right, but I don't think they ever saw themselves as like artists.
Hmm.
Um, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that. Just hearing you talk about the way you talk about these different like photographs and uh music,
Mhm.
you seem like a very aware child, a very like you were paying attention,
Mhm.
and like it sat pretty deep with you, these different, I don't know, creative outlets of your parents.
Yeah, I mean, my parents would always say that I was a pretty easy child to like take care of. Like, I mean, I had my difficulties like any other child, but I was fairly independent. I didn't really, um, I don't know. I kind of like to do like my own thing, and I still do. I like to be independent. I like more meaning like I like to be alone a lot. I find a lot of like comfort in that. One of the things that like even going to the movie theater, I love going to the movie theater by myself because if I bring somebody else, um, if I'm inviting somebody else to watch a movie that they might not know of, I have this anxiety. Is like, are they going to like it? So the whole entire time I'm watching their face. I'm not watching
Hmm.
the film, and so I'm just like I'm just watching from the corner of my eye. I'm just like, are they liking this? And it just
Yeah.
becomes stressful. And it's like, oh no, no, no. So for me, I rather just watch something on my own, and then I just come up with my own opinion of the film rather than being being tainted by
Influenced
yeah.
by somebody else.
Hmm.
Do you feel that way when other people watch your films that you shot? Like watching with them for the first time?
um,
Or would you rather not be there when they're watching?
I mean, both. I would rather not be there, but at the same time, I want to like know if things landed or if
Yeah.
they're. I think it's harder for a director than it is a cinematographer because I mean the director is taking like the full blunt force of
The
of the
whole
yeah the
story,
whole entire
the
vision.
responsibility of
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like I'm just a
A
you know
cog in the
and yeah a cog in the clock or something. I don't know.
yeah. So with the culinary, with you were mentioning that that aspect of your childhood kind of came out, and was that something that you were considering after, like, in thinking about school after high school, is doing culinary school?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. When it came time to choose schools, like neither of my parents went to college, so it was like kind of me figuring it out and asking advisors. But I didn't know what I wanted to be. Culinary arts sounded the most intriguing just because it kind of already had like a background in it or like background. But
Yeah.
so I looked at pamphlets through schools. But I was a very good student too, where um, I think this is where I didn't see myself as an artist or as a creative is because I was very good at science and math.
Mm.
That made sense to me. English, like literature, I liked it, but I wasn't a very good reader, and so I kind of like dismissed it pretty quickly and just being like, oh, okay, well maybe um I don't know the creative, and then maybe it's of like kind of the stereotypes that I've seen as a child through films is like the creatives are kind of like who just recite poems and recite like authors, and I'm just like that's not me.
Yeah.
That is not me. I don't know any of that. And I have like even reading the scripts, it takes me a long time to read a script, and all I see is how many pages there are.
Hmm.
I see 90 pages. Oh my gosh, 20 pages for a short film. Why can't this be five? Um yeah, and so I didn't really see myself as a creative, and so I had an offer to go to Boston College um on a full ride for science. And but I in my head I thought that meant just like learning science in general. I didn't see it as a foundation to go into grad school to either become a doctor or something, something more disciplined. And so that kind of scared me because I didn't want to feel trapped that I didn't have the choice to do something else.
Hmm.
And so I didn't take it. Which actually I'm glad I didn't because because I ended up at BYU, and I went to BYU as I put myself as a culinary arts student because I thought food science was the same thing as culinary arts. And when I looked into the food science program, it's nothing like culinary arts.
Yeah.
It's different. And so I was like, oh crap. But I was already here, so I was like, crap, I should have done a little bit more research. But yeah, I declared myself as I don't even know what major. I don't think because culinary arts isn't an option, so I think it was food science.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is like, it's like the chemical makeup of foods and
Correct.
like creating
Uh-huh.
new commercial
Hmm.
foods.
Hmm.
So totally different
Very
than
different.
culinary
It
science.
wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't what I thought. But during that time where I was just like, oh, crap, I'm already going this route, I might as well just graduate and get my degree and find work. That's when I got an elective. I got the elective to for film school, or sorry, for the film program, and I just wanted to take a fun, easy A class. It was fun, but it wasn't easy. It
Mm.
was there was a lot of work to it, and which I appreciated. I like that it was challenging, because I mean I've never seen film as more than an entertainment. It was, I mean, there's films that touched me, and I was like, oh, that made an impression. But other
Mm.
than that, it wasn't anything that was I mean, it opened the idea of like you can make a career out of this. And but I remember sitting next to this student who because the TA asked, so who here is planning to become a film major? And there's like three students that raised their hand, and I talked to the one that raised his hand right next to me. I was like, so why do you want to go into film? It's like how long have you been doing it for? He's like, oh, I've been doing it since high school. And he showed me his video with VFX, and I was like, oh gosh, these kids are good. I
Yeah.
was like, no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
There's like, I'm not gonna do it. It's like, screw it, I'm not gonna do it. But it just haunted me like over and over again. It haunted me, and I was also taking another class, another cinema class called Scandinavian and German cinema, and it just sounded interesting. I just picked it. No rhyme or reason. It was just it was cool. It sounded cool. But what I liked about it, the way that it was taught, was amazing. It was a very interdisciplinary, where they show you the film, and it went in a pretty good like timeline, where they start out with like the older films. I think the first film that we saw is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and then it would go through the Passion of Joan of Arc, and Professor Oscarson. So he would talk about the political situation, the economical situation of and kind of like the author's kind of like intent to kind of inform the audience of what's going on, and that just blew my mind. It's like you can do all that with film. That is so cool. And so I was always excited for class. I was super excited. I would get there early, just pick a good seat to watch for the film viewing, and I watched a lot of classics that I didn't know were classics, and they were just films that were amazing. And so I think I made the decision to just not do school for a year. I took my break, and then I helped out on sets, because I felt like I needed experience before I went to the film program or applied for the film program. And I tend to be a perfectionist anyway too, and so if I feel like I'm not um, at capacity with what people are doing, then I'm just like uh, I like to just kind of study in my own time, or just like learn it enough that I feel like I can
Keep up.
Yeah, just be part of the team.
Yeah.
I don't like to feel like I'm dead weight. That's the worst feeling. Even on film sets, I hate feeling like dead weight. Um and so that's why I took it, because I felt like if I went to film school, then I would just always be trying to catch up the whole entire time. Anyway, so I did all this like quote unquote training, and I watched. The biggest thing that I told myself that I was going to do is each day for a year, during that year, every single night I'm going to watch one movie. And so I watched a crap ton of films.
Holy cow!
I watched a ton of films.
Yeah, you put yourself through your own film school.
Yeah,
almost.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean, and this wasn't, and I didn't see it like that. It wasn't like a film school. It was just like I need to catch up.
Yeah. Wow. First of all, like what movies did you decide? How did you decide on what movies you were going to watch? And second, like, how'd you get on set? I feel like that's a really big barrier for a lot of people who want to get into film. They're like, I don't know who to talk to or where to go, get on film sets.
Yeah, that's true. You bring up a good point. So I did have a friend who said he was starting his own production company. And he was a friend that I worked with a couple years ago before. And so we just kept up, and I didn't know he was going to go into production. He just mentioned it, and I was like, wait, really? I was like, please let me help out with whatever I can. He's like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know yet, but I mean, I'm intrigued by the camera. He's like, okay. And then he reached out like a month later. It's like, hey, we need a PA, a camera PA. And then when I went on set, it was like, actually, you're the second AC. I was like, what the heck is a second AC?
That's crazy. So first set you were ever on, you were second AC.
Second AC. I remember getting there. I was super eager. I woke up early. I was so happy. Like, it was, well, excited and nervous, and because I didn't know what to expect. And then, but I had like a lot of these films in the back of my head, and so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna sound like an idiot to these people. So I was like, at least I've seen movies.
Yeah.
And then they would ask me questions like, oh yeah, like this DP and this DP. They're like, wow, that's a pretty well thought out answer. I was like, oh yeah, no, these are I've been watching their movies. Like, how long have you been doing this? Like, this is my first set. And they're like, oh, okay, well, here's the clapper. I think you know what you're doing. And I was like, no, I have no idea.
No, yeah,
Oh, it was a mess. It was
really.
people like I can see the sound guy looking at me, and the DP who was also the operator. It's like, you got to bring it up. And I was like, okay, open it. I was like, okay. It's like, okay, now say it. Say what?
Every micro step.
This is in front of the whole entire crew.
Oh, and that's such a stressful spot to be,
Oh
right
my
in front of the
gosh.
lens.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was terrible, but it was a small commercial. Like, looking back, it was a really small commercial, so it wasn't
Yeah.
like it was okay to fail, and I'm glad I did it there. So I have a lot of sympathy. When you were telling me, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, I'll guide you every step of the way. I
Yeah.
promise. Like, and my brother has helped out too, and I was like,
Yeah.
dude, it's like, I'm not gonna. I mean, I should probably let him kind of embarrass himself a little bit, because I feel like sometimes, those
You learn pretty quick
you learn
that
very
way.
quick. Yeah, you
Yeah, I
learn.
think it bears being mentioned that you brought me on for my first time being a second AC on
Oh,
a
really?
set. Yeah.
Oh,
So that, and you and Trevor definitely helped me through
yeah.
the micro.
It's scary.
Like, you're like, okay, next time don't slam the sticks if it's right in front of somebody's face.
Don't worry, I learned that too,
Yeah.
and then the same DP, he called me again for another shoot. This was now when I was in the program. It was for a feature.
Hmm.
They were doing the second half, and he asked me to be his AC, and so I was on clapper, and I still kind of didn't know what I was doing. And it's funny that you say soft sticks, because I didn't know what soft sticks were, and so
Yeah.
in front of people's faces, and you just see them go,
Yeah,
like,
they
just
jolt a little.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, you gotta do soft sticks, and so I did soft sticks, and you couldn't even
Couldn't
hear them.
hear
And then the
It's
sound,
an art.
it is an
It's
art,
an
so
art.
it's just a little. Oh gosh, man,
Yeah.
the tragedies and the humiliation that I went through.
But
Uh,
yeah, what great early experience to have,
yeah.
though, on
Mhm,
set. So that you started out on a commercial, and then
mhm.
did he just keep giving you work? Or how did you keep?
Well, it wasn't even paid. It was just like for free. So I did a
Yeah.
lot. I did a lot of free stuff for like 2 years.
Wow.
Nothing was paid. Maybe I got like $50 or something, and I thought that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
$100 too. Actually, on that feature, I did make $100 a day, which I thought was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I know the DP, when he called me, he was like, yeah, it's really low pay. I'm so sorry. It's like, $100? You kidding me? Like,
Yeah. You're like,
I'm good with that.
it's fine.
I was
Yeah.
like, that's more than I made the last 3 years. So
Yeah. From like $9.25 as a student
I know,
in
right?
a student job an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's pretty nice.
it was nice. Yeah. And it was consistent work for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was pretty happy. And they paid me in cash too, like, just cashed out. So I don't have to wait for a check or anything. So
Nice.
it felt pretty cool. But yeah, but all that kind of accumulated into my first year, and then I went into school now over prepared. Like,
Yeah.
now I
You've
knew,
been on.
yeah, now I knew quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so, but I still didn't know like lighting. I didn't know techniques. I just knew like basic stuff, very basic stuff, but it made sense.
Mm.
We would talk about theory, which I was very excited about. I really, really, really love theory, and that's what I really enjoyed about the program, is how much theory they dived into, because otherwise I would never, on my free time, I would never
Be able to.
yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I just
learn that on your
it's
own.
so dense that
Yeah.
it becomes a little like, unless you're forced to,
Yeah.
there's no way. And so, um, yeah. So
What are some of the theories that you've taken with you into your work that you continually reference back to? If you can't, I don't like.
No, yeah, yeah.
mean,
I think I mean, the power of the edit, or the cut, like I know what's filmmaker Brisson would talk about how long um uh the longer it take, like the more it becomes like part of reality. And once you cut, it's a movie. Like, the audience kind of gets to relax. That was one that really stuck out. The other one is the Stucher effect, where you do cut from a face to like a POV of a character, and then now you become the character. And so Eisenstein's a method of editing, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I'm the worst person. Like, it makes sense in my head, but in class it felt so dense. But we had really good professors that just broke it down,
Yeah.
and I really I loved going to class.
Yeah, that's so you had a lot of production experience going into these theory classes, and I'm sure you were like, okay, that makes, I don't know, you can like see how it's going to play out in the theory.
Mhm.
Were you at what point were you in production when you went into the film program? Like, were you already camera operating? Were you just ACing through those first couple of years?
I was mostly ACing, just kind of I didn't want any more responsibility than that. I didn't feel adequate. So,
Mm.
um, but but I only did that for a very brief time, a very brief moment. I think as soon as I got into the film program, I kind of declared myself as like I'm a cinematographer. The other one that kind of like I was dabbling a little bit was production design. I thought production design was very interesting, but but yeah, it was definitely cinematography. And so
Hmm.
after that, like I just kind of took the leap of faith as like this is where I'm going to go, and then I'm not going to turn back.
And then that kind of opened the door to doing, yeah, how did, tell me a little bit more about getting like having someone reach out to you your first year to do
Mhm.
DP a doc capstone,
A
right?
dog capstone. Yeah, it was called Risky Business with Taylor Lewis. He was looking for a DP, and I think a bunch of students went out to Europe or to England for a study abroad. And I remember getting a Instagram message from one of my friends, Lauren Vanderwerk. She's like, "Hey, do you want to DP a doc capstone?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds cool." Like, I don't know if I'm qualified. Well, I didn't tell her that, but in my head I was just like, I don't know if I'm qualified, but yeah, I want to do it. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And then he reached out to me. He's like, "Well, can you send me some of your work? I'd like to talk to you." And so yeah, the interrogation process of it began. And so, but we clicked. He was cool, and I just I was hungry for an opportunity to kind of show myself. Um,
Were you YouTubing things? Is that where do you get
yeah,
when
YouTube,
you're beforehand, you're in your preparation process, you were just YouTubing how to.
YouTubing, and also the American Cinematographer magazine. That was like my Bible,
Hmm.
kind of through school. Is just like I would they would interview films that, well, I would find it movies that I really like connected to, or just really made an impression, and I just like to see how they broke it down.
Hmm.
And so I just kind of get little pieces of here and there, and then and tried my best to emulate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was your first project, and then two other student capstones
Hmm.
that you were working on.
Yeah. I did an internship at Keslow, and then when I came back, I shot with Colton Elsie for his capstone. Yeah, I remember seeing it for the first time in theaters for with the capstone premieres, and I was just like, "Whoa, good job, good job, Howie!" I was like, "That's cool."
Yeah.
And so yeah,
That
mhm.
was Gather, correct?
Correct. Yeah, Gather.
And Gather was, you were nominated by the BYU faculty, or they submitted your name, right? For.
Yeah. So the way that happened is, so when I came into the film program, one of my research thing is like, okay, I want to make the most out of my schooling career, and that means I need this to be like a big jumping point into professional career. And so so I looked up, I was like, what are the awards? What are like the accolades that will help me kind of get the edge over um, just into competition. And I remember reading through the American Cinematographer, the ASC Heritage Award, and that was like as soon as I read it, and I saw like the films that were there, I was just like, okay, that's my goal.
Hmm,
That's my goal. And so yeah, then so the next 4 years were that was just prepping up for.
prepping for that.
Hmm.
So what year were you when you shot Gather? Was that your senior
That was my
or junior year?
junior year. Yeah, that was later. That was late into my junior year. So 2018. I think it was 2018. Yeah.
Hmm. And when did you find out about the ASC awards? The Heritage, it's the ASC Student Heritage
Student
Awards.
Heritage Award. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was working on the job for this roofing company doing some documentary work. Uh, and I got a call from LA, and I was like, just looked at it. I was like, I don't get LA calls. It's like it's either a scammer, so screw you, or I think I know what this is, because they told me about generally what date they were gonna call.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And then I couldn't answer my phone because I was in the middle of a take. I was like,
Mm,
okay, I'll call back. And then he left a voicemail, which actually now in hindsight, I was very happy that I didn't take the call, because now I have the voicemail telling me, he's like, hey, this is so and so,
yeah.
congratulations on.
Yeah.
So it's like a memory, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I just remember like being so like the blood went to my head, just like, oh, just to my head, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's like I just felt like when they talk about like being ecstatic about something, I felt like that's one of the few times in my life where I'm just like, that is cool.
Did that open doors for you, or how did that open doors for you getting the ASC Heritage Award?
So I think it was all in timing too, because that was the same year that earlier that year I had the short film that I did with Robert go into Sundance.
Mm.
And
So you had already met Robert at this point.
mhm, yeah. So yeah, so I shot Gather, and after Gather, that's when I met Robert.
Do you want to tell us how you
Mhm.
met Robert and how that
Yeah, so after I
panned
shot
out?
Gather and I knew I couldn't DP anymore, I was starting to look for opportunities where they were outside of school. And so Scott was my faculty advisor, and he told me that, well, there's a new professor that just came in. You should get to know him. You should meet him. He's a filmmaker too, and maybe he'll have a project or something that you could help on. And so I was like, yeah. And then he introduced us briefly, and then he was starting a project with Chris Kuchry, who was in another department for a short film, and Robert was like, well, if you want to AC, we can't pay you, but if you want to help out, that would be cool. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's like I'll do anything. And this is right after I came back from Keslo too, so I was pretty tech savvy. Like I knew how to build cameras, I knew like what went into them,
Hmm.
and so I think that made an impression. Like I felt like Robert didn't really have to uh, tell me anything other than like let's go to this lens or this lens. So I felt like a real AC, and but that time I was prepared. I was like I knew what I was doing, so it wasn't like I didn't feel like a fluke. But then Robert called me like a couple months later. He was like, "Hey, I have another project if you're interested." And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to help out." And we were talking. It's like, yeah, and then and then maybe he was just kind of mentioning like he was alluding to that I was gonna shoot it, and I was like, and so that I was like, wait, do you want me to be the DP? And it was like yeah. I was like, I thought it was like, and so that I was like, oh gosh, dude, like this is pressure,
Yeah.
and it was the minors, and so this was the shoot
Okay.
of the minors, and I was like, oh wow, okay. So we were talking about it, and but him assuming that I knew that I was going to DP it, and me just kind of thinking that I was going to AC it again, and then and then that kind of just switched my brain on. So it was like, okay, well, we can do this. We can work with these gels. We should probably bring these lights.
Hmm.
And I think up to the point Robert kind of just used natural light or just smaller lights, and I was talking about like bigger lights. I was talking about like a M18, well, bigger lights, but they were bigger. They're bigger than what I was even used to,
Hmm.
M18s, and using colored gels because I saw it on another shoot, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And so I was like, I want to experiment with that.
Hmm.
And Robert let me use it.
Hmm.
And it was a good collaboration. I really had a really good time, and he gave me the time to prep. We talked about scenes and shots, and I was like, oh, this is how filmmaking is supposed to be.
Hmm. So were you also doing the lighting on that one then? You were
Hmm.
essentially gaffing it
Uh-huh.
as well.
Uh-huh.
Had you worked with a gaffer or key grip before that on like capstones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I was familiar. I was familiar. Like, you don't want to blow out any circuits, and so. But Robert also knew that too. He was like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
he was familiar with it. So it was nice that we were both on the same page.
Yeah.
Um, and so I knew the basics. I know we didn't want to go too crazy because it was just kind of a two-man team at that point. So
Yeah.
we were like, let's get like 2 units max, and that's it. And it worked out. And that's where I kind of discovered, like, I was like, you know what, I don't need that much to make something look really, really nice, especially with the cameras that are so sophisticated now.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we ended up renting was a lens from Keslo,
Hmm.
an older Baltar lens, and it yeah, I created like nice little image, and Robert was really happy. I remember when he texted me back like later that week after he was like, "This is the most beautiful thing I shot." I was uh, like Lord that I've made, and that made me really happy. I was like, "Oh,
Hmm.
that's so cool."
Yeah.
And so this is now I'm going into my last year at school, and then he like in November he tells me like, hey, guess what, the miners got into, well, first he called me kind of like a like nonchalant kind of like conversation about like whatever and here and there, I don't even know, but then he's like, okay, well, oh yeah, by the way, uh the miners got into Sundance. I was like, what the freak? It's
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me?
You
Like,
gonna lead off with
I know,
that?
right? I was like, what were you doing? And so yeah,
Oh
it
man.
was, and then I could tell in his voice that he was very happy and proud too. And so
Yeah.
I was super ecstatic. And then a couple, even so, a little bit later afterwards, another month, like in November, he handed me the script to The Killing of Two Lovers. He's like, hey, I was like, I have a project, and he told me, hey, can you come to my office? I want to talk to you for a second about something.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh yeah, sure. It's like, oh cool, another project. So I thought it was gonna be like a short film or maybe talking about Sundance. I don't know what was going through my head, but and then I saw this fat script on there, and I was like, oh gosh, that's a long short. Uh, but yeah, but then he was like, hey, I want to propose this to you,
Hmm.
and then it's like I want you to shoot it, and it's like it's like, oh no, first I was like, yeah, I'll do it. It's like next summer, right? I was like, no, like next month, and I was like, oh
Wow.
fudge, and so I was, and that just gave me so much anxiety because I was like, well, I'm so close to graduating, I don't really want to drop out like my classes right now.
Yeah. What?
Uh,
So were you in fall semester? What
hmm
month was this?
it was fall semester.
Fall
Hmm.
semester, probably halfway through the
Yep,
semester.
halfway through the semester.
So he wanted you to shoot it in like that
Uh,
November,
it would be in December. We were going to
December.
start
You
shooting.
would shoot
Yeah,
it.
from December 2nd to 12
It's like
days after
right
that.
at the beginning of finals.
Hmm. I had to leave probably 2 days to do an in-class final for some of my classes, and then um, but I only ended up missing like a couple hours of a shooting day, and
Hmm.
I came back. It worked out great because one of the shooting days, the shooting day that did miss out, the front end of the day was snowing and raining, so they couldn't shoot
Hmm.
what they needed to, so they had to move it for later in the day, and I came like maybe 10 minutes right before they were going to start rolling. So
Nice.
and now Robert has mentioned that in some of his interviews where it's like he says, yeah, he's like, he just came and was like, hey, what's up? I'm here. And then he's like, oh gosh, thank you. Because it was so much, because I mean, our crew was so tiny that
Yeah,
like it's like he's like I'm
he would have
now
had
I'm
to.
spread too thin. Like
Yeah,
I'm directing, cam operating, and then
and
just like
worrying about lighting
worry
probably
about
too.
lighting. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your pre-production process like for The Killing of Two Lovers in terms of like deciding and discussing with Robert the themes and how you're going to cover that through framing and lighting and,
Hmm.
and then obviously the gear,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
So the nice thing about the Killing of the Lover for as far as gear is that we had to use what was available.
right.
Like we didn't really have a budget to rent anything else out, so it's like, okay, well, we have this and these lenses and this lighting equipment. And I was like, great, okay, well, we'll have to make that work somehow. Um, and then as far as meeting with Robert for pre-production for the style, he was like, hey, I want you to watch this film, this film, this film. Hey,
Hmm.
you should look into this photographer as well. So he had a vision. He just
Yeah.
wanted my input at that point. And we did like two scouts down to Kanash during the weekend, uh, and so I think it was a pretty well kind of like very collaborative um, uh, pre-production, and it's nice to work with directors who already have a vision,
Yeah.
and they just bring you on to kind of like just to hear your input and whatever, um even I would say even on the first day we had a plan, but we were trying to figure out if it was the right thing. And
Hmm.
then when we shot in Kanash after our toy store scene, I that solidified the aesthetic. It's like, okay, these wide frames that we really don't really go for close-ups until like key pivotal moments. Because yeah, and so
After seeing what had played out
yeah.
okay.
But even then we talked about like this should feel like a family album. Like this should feel like a really like rugged family album.
Hmm.
To like there's nothing glamorous about their lives. So and Robert likes underexposure and doesn't mind like a low set he doesn't mind green. He wanted green. And so if it felt dirty, then good. It was good for him.
Hmm.
He So that gave me freedom. And so once I kind of like learned a technical aspect of like how to shoot it, it just became second nature. Like now I was looking for frames, I was looking for depth, I was
Hmm.
looking for colors, I was looking for like what's going to create depth. It's like
Hmm.
and we knew that we were going to save the close-ups for very key moments, and that's from learning from theory. It's like
Hmm.
you don't we diminishing returns. You don't want to do a close up right off the bat when it's like not necessary.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not going to mean anything.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about wanting this to feel like a family album. What were some of the themes that you and Robert talked about beforehand that really influenced that style, or like those decisions that then you then solidified on set?
I guess one of the things that we talked about is like since we were, I mean, just being at the location, it just felt like a small town. There wasn't anything there.
Hmm.
The busiest it ever got was like around 3 p.m. so people can go to the market to like that little store. I
Yeah.
forget what's it called, and so there wasn't anything like very flashy about the place. It was very blue collar. And so when I think uh about those towns, I feel like I remember seeing like I feel like I relive it through photographs from like maybe a museum or anything. And when Robert showed the, the pictures of Todd Hito, I think that resonated. And but he talked a lot about long takes. I feel like Robert kind of figured out like the power of a long take
Hmm.
from his other films too. And so he knew that he wanted a shot from where Nikki was living to extend all the way to where he was staying at his dad's house. He wanted to show how close they were, how close he was to see like kind of like uh, uh, this affair that was going on,
Hmm.
and just kind of put the audience into the shoes of um, of
David.
David. Yeah. So
Yeah.
um, I think yeah, I don't think we had too many rules. It was more like we figured out, or at least I figured it out more like on set. I think
Hmm.
maybe Robert already had the vision, and he would probably nudge me if we were kind of going too far away from what he was thinking.
Hmm.
But the nice thing is that every single time I'll like we would frame up, he'll look at it. He's like, so it's like, what do you think? And then he would always kind of ask me for kind of like reassurance, and it's like, yeah, I like it. And then it's like, okay, good, let's shoot it. So it wasn't like this tyrant director. And it's like, okay, no, it has to be this, it has to be
Yeah.
here. It was very like again very
You just
collaborative.
had a he had a clear vision, and you were in on that
Hmm.
vision with him.
Yeah, I was just trying to interpret what that vision was, and
Yeah.
hopefully I was making the right interpretation.
Hmm.
Um, but we knew we were going to be shooting in the car quite a bit, so that was one of the things that we did in our scouts is like, where does the camera have to go? What lens does it have to be on? Um, um, and like we also showed like the proximity of like the mercantile shop to the house, and just kind of put the audience, make them know that this everything here is within like two blocks.
Yeah.
There's nothing, they're not going down to like half an hour to see something. Like everything here is a small town.
Hmm.
Um, um, one like one I think one of the more kind of like things that felt like experimental is when we framed David in his car, we cut off the passenger seat,
Yeah.
and and for me that kind of felt like so there's three homes. There's Nikki's home, David's old home. There's his home that he grew up in, which is not no longer his home. It's his parents' home or his dad's home. And then his only real home is his truck. That's
Hmm.
his own private space. And cutting off the frame of the passenger seat should feel more like kind of like this broken home, kind of like
Hmm.
Nikki's no longer in the picture. So it puts David more constrained into this corner.
Yeah.
So we took inspiration from Ida, where they did framing like kind of like this off-kilter framing, and it felt appropriate for this film. And then we took that, and then we kind of just we tried to make it our own.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
When did you get to see the full
And in all its glory.
yeah film, and
So
what was that like?
yeah, I saw a rough cut first with Robert's office. He was out of town, and it was just all in black and white because he likes to work everything just stripped out of. So he's only looking at composition,
Yeah.
and I thought that was a very genius way to work. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Oh, and then uh, and then I saw it again, but without sound during the coloring with Drew. And then, but the first time I saw it when all its glory was at Sundance, and so
Mhm.
that's why it made me even more like nervous and eager, and I was just like, oh man, but I was just blown away. I was like, wow, well, we made this, we made this, and it was really cool, and the audience also responded to it um, really well. I feel like they gasped when they needed to, they laughed when they needed to, and they felt emotion, and it was nice kind of hearing afterwards the audience kind of like getting your inputs like, oh, that was amazing, or blah blah, or I felt that the Q&As were pretty cool, where like some people was like, oh yeah, I was just going through a divorce, And this film really kind of, I felt it. It really spoke to me.
Hmm.
Or people talk about like their grandchildren or their kids, and I don't know. So it just touched touched people in other ways I didn't really think it would, and so
Hmm.
but it was cool. It felt universal.
Hmm.
You know.
What, I mean, going forward, what's the ideal career path? I know that sounds
Hmm.
silly to ask because it
Sure.
seems pretty obvious for, I
Hmm.
think, for a lot of people, like, well, obviously you want to end up working on feature
Hmm.
films.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right. Right now, I mean, I don't do much commercial, which is also which can be kind of harmful right now for my career because it's nice. Commercials tend to pay more money, and it's nice to just work for like a week max, and make what you make on a feature.
Hmm.
But I think what I gravitate or lean towards more for a feature is that I love the familial aspect of it. Like after a while, like especially the small crews, is like I know my ACs, I know my G&E team, I
Yeah.
know the hair and makeup people, and it's cool, it's fun, and it becomes a family, and so like like you have each other's back in a way, and I mean
Yeah.
you kind of like it just feels like a family, and I feel like with something that's a little bit more rushed, like a commercial, you kind of just know maybe your first and second really well, and the gaffer and the grips, you're like, oh hey, kind of thing, but it's nothing really intimate.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would love to continue working on features. Ideally, I would love to work 9 months out of the year, and then those other 3 months is just be with my family, like
Yeah.
just watching my kids grow and just kind of like spending time to just be present, because that's what my biggest fear is, like not being present enough. And I tell myself that, but I tell myself like when I like even on drives home, I was like, okay, I'm going to be present. But as soon as the phone call hits, I was like, oh, I got to do this, and then I can feel kind of like my wife just be like, really again? And so I mean, she knows it. She's very supportive. But my kids, I feel like I don't want them to know me as it's like, okay, film is more important than us.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that can be hard, I think, in the industry where, especially where, um, you've got, as a cinematographer, you've got so much going on with pre-production, and then when you're in production, that's it.
Hmm.
Like you were saying, on a production day, you can't plan
Yeah.
anything else in.
No.
It is what it is.
Right.
And I'm sure working on a feature where it's, weeks on end,
Hmm.
you're that does become your family.
Hmm.
It's hard to s- uh to balance that, but
Yeah, I mean, even on that long commercial that we did together, that was cool because I feel
yeah.
like we got to know each other. Like I knew you, but we only met like a couple days. But then like after being 3 weeks, I was like, oh, okay, I think I know Lisi now. And so yeah, I mean, I just want to keep working with people that I feel like I can connect. Bradford Young says if I can't break bread with a director or anything, then I don't know if I can work with them either.
Hmm.
And so I was like, that's a good point. It's like if I can't invite you over and be with my family, then maybe I shouldn't do the project. And so I was like, oh, that's really sage advice, because he's also a father. I mean, he's a bit older, but
Hmm.
he has a lot of wisdom, and I love hearing him talk on podcasts. And I was like, I think I really resonate a lot with his philosophy of life and filmmaking,
Hmm.
because it's not just a career for him, it is life. And that's how I kind of think about it too. Is like, yeah, everything that I do, or everything that I see people interact, it influences my decisions on set. So it's not, I can't turn off my brain. Like it's impossible. I look at, like, if even if I'm trying to relax, I start seeing the light, and I'm just like, oh, this is cool. It's like how, and then I start dissecting. I was like, where's that coming from? Blah blah blah. I was like, is it bouncing off anything? No. Okay, well, and then it starts hitting like a metal container. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And so so now
Yeah.
my rest just became work again. So it's
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, so it's I just kind of learned to embrace it, and I guess I'm still learning how to manage it in my brain. Um, and yeah, so.
Yeah. It sounds like, from what you've been explaining in your experience, it's not just a commercial for you. It's not just a
Hmm.
film. Like, you want to communicate something.
Hmm.
Um, in an ideal world, what kind of projects are you wanting to be working on long term
Hmm.
and consistently through your career?
Yeah, those films that have just this interdisciplinary kind of like aspect to them where it's not just it might be just entertainment, but there's like layers to it, and I like that. I like being able to revisit a film and being like, okay, I'm going to see it through this lens now. It's like, oh wow, I'm going to see it through this lens. It's like, oh crap, I didn't realize that. So is those films I feel like are like masterly crafted, or even if they just deal with maybe just one political thing, but it hits really hard. I'm just like that's the films I want to be part of. I want to be I'm sure I'm sure people love entertain like or there's films for entertainment and that's fine, but for me like it's not the ones that sink in or um I don't know. I'd rather have a film that really means a lot to me, but nobody watches being made rather than the film that just feels like foo-foo and it's like it just feels like candy or something. I don't know. Like there's no nutritional value to it. And so
not a 3 Michelin star type of
yeah, I know 3 Michelin star or nothing. Yeah, yeah, so it's
yeah.
no, it's I don't know, and that might sound snobby, but I mean, I don't know. It's like you know, I wanna I do want to make an impact because filmmaking is already a privileged life. Like anybody that's not involved in this, they're like, you're just working a camera. That's what I feel people think about. It's like, you're just pointing the thing and pressing record. That's it. That's your job. And I was like, well, I wish it was that simple. I really do wish it was that simple. No, it takes a lot of planning, or at least I probably put myself through the ringer more than I should because I want to make a statement. I want to make, I want to create meaning with an audience. And so, and for me it's through the visual medium. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a cinematographer, how do you feel like you impact that message? Is it just through the choosing the project, like saying yes or no to the project, or do you feel like you can help bring a project up to a level that has more meaning?
For me, the film has like the story has to resonate because I mean foremost like it's all about story. And that's what people are going to care like even I mean you think about like the 1920s where everything was radio, like they were telling story in a very specific way. Where now that we've become more visual, we tell stories in a very specific way through a visual medium. And so I can't I always have to tell myself like I can't be self-indulgent and just do a cool shot because it's not gonna there's no weight to it. And so this is what I like about the podcasts like that I listen to is a lot of the very seasoned cinematographers they're learning to, or they say they learn to like strip down like a lot of what they do. They go back to simplicity, and because it's all about the story. And as long as I'm adding to the story, because I do feel like I am pretty vocal when there's an idea that's presented on the script. I was like, oh, if we do it this way, I feel like we're now going into this person's perspective. I try to put myself in the shoes of the audience. It's like how are we gonna how as an audience is gonna take this in. And so I don't know. So yeah. So I mean I think about the audience. I think about the story, how they're going to interpret it, and the reason I get chosen is because I tell it a specific way, or I tell it a specific way through my through cinematography. And so because yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. Okay.
No, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and thanks for humoring me on
No, you're good. You're
that
good.
question. If it, yeah,
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. This loosely ties into what we were just talking about, but what is your next big project that you're looking forward to?
I'm still looking for the next big project. Right now, I really like working with Robert because he's a great collaborator. He has a good vision. I learn a lot from him. I feel like for me, he's a mentor. He's teaching me a lot, and hopefully, I'm teaching him a couple of things too. But as far as project, I don't know. Like I do have a bunch of scripts that have gotten sent to me, and so just reading through them has been a process because, like I said, I'm not a really good reader, and I see it a certain perspective. But I always like to talk to the director just to get their vision and see what they think because I mean, the way that I would read it is coming from my own perspective, not maybe how it was intended, but that's also good because then I can kind of give my own input. It's like, oh, I saw it like this way. What do you think this could work? And hopefully they say yes, or they will say no, but I like what like this piece of what you just said, and so it becomes collaborative. So
Yeah.
as long as there's a good collaboration about a good story that I feel like is has it doesn't have to have a message. It doesn't have to be didactic,
Yeah.
but something that will create a strong emotion. I feel like that's where I do feel fulfilled. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That conveys something.
Mm-hmm. It conveys something. It's, if people hate it, then that's fine. At least that's an emotion. If
Yeah.
people, and I can learn from that.
Yeah.
If they love it, that's great. But I think I heard this too, is like it's the worst emotion that could be conveyed is when there's complacency. They're like, it was all right. They're like, it was whatever. And I'm just like, oh, well, that's not real feedback by any means. So it's either hate it or love it sort of thing. So.
How can we, just for our audience, how can they keep up with you and
Mm-hmm.
keep up with your work moving forward?
Man, I'm terrible. I'm terrible with social media. I mean, I only post when I feel like I have some work, but other than that, I wish I could live off the grid. Honestly, like I wish I could not be on social media, because I don't like the feeling of competition. It adds another stress of anxiety. I was like, oh, I gotta do it like this. But I do have on Instagram, and that's where I guess I'm most active is on Instagram. It's Osakre, OS. I don't even know how to spell it.
We can put it in the show notes below.
Yeah, put it in the show notes.
That's fine. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for spending this time to talk with us. I think we're probably...
I appreciate it. Thank you guys. Good questions.
To go. Thanks for listening. To find out who our next guest is and to stay up to date on all of our projects and announcements, follow us on all major social media platforms at Sorø Films. What makes this podcast distinct is that we put you, the audience, in the driver's seat. Influence the conversation by submitting questions for our guests ahead of each episode via Instagram. Sorø Films helps in all aspects of the filmmaking process, including funding, production, marketing, and distribution, with a focus on emerging feature filmmakers. If you're developing a project you'd like to pitch to us, you can submit it at sorofilms.com/submissions.